Hello again, Gills fans. Welcome back to the latest episode of Gills in the Blood TV. Is under 7 days now until the new Sky Bet League 2 season gets underway. New shirts have arrived for us Gills fans. Season ticket cards are in the building. Coaches, trains are booked for Stockport away. Southampton Cup tickets have been ordered. Cannot wait. The most excited I've been about a new campaign in many a year. Also, welcome to fans of any other club that is watching, because this is not just a Gillingham-related season preview video. Of course, I will look at my own club during the first period of the episode, but then I will look at the division as a whole and offer my thoughts on the two that will sadly go down come May 2024, on those that will be in the top 7, the top 3, and ultimately who I think will be crowned Sky Bet League 2 winners. But yeah, going to follow a tried and tested method, which means looking at Gillingham Football Club in the first half, like I've already mentioned, who I think will be top scorer, who I think will have a breakthrough season, youngster to make an impact, transfer business so far. Obviously, then we look at where I ultimately think the Gills are going to end up before the trials and tribulations of the 1 to 24. Right, let's get straight into it. Who I think can potentially be the Gills top scorer in the league over the coming 9 months. I sat here last season thinking that Mika Mandron was a decent signing, thinking that Scott Cashkit was an all right signing. It is night and day compared to 12 months ago to where we are now. We've obviously had the Brad Gallinson takeover in the middle of last season, which rescued that season, because I have no doubt that we would be a National League club sitting here talking about that division now if it wasn't for Brad and Shannon coming in. So plenty of options, probably need more goals, but do we need a 20-goal a season striker? I am not so sure. If you look at the clubs last season that went up, Leighton Orient, I think Paul Smythe got 9 in the league. He was their top scorer. And then others that chipped in, the likes of Charlie Kelman. Carlisle and Bradford were probably the two that had massive goal scorers in Christian Dennis, but he hardly played after Christmas or scored. Danny Rose was a winger who had a very good return for Northampton as they got promoted. Stevenage didn't have a 20-goal a season striker. Bradford had Andy Cook, who nearly got to 30. They're still in our division. So is it imperative? Let me know what you think. But my pick for the Gills top scorer, looking at where we are at the moment, is going to be Tom Nichols. Tom came in January. It was our first edition under the Gallinson's regime, and he scored 6 goals and contributed 5 assists in the second half of the season. So if you look at that, 6 goals, 5 assists, 23 games, double it. 12 goals, 10 assists would be a very good return for a player that I don't think is an out-and-out goal scorer. I think he's very good at both sides of the game. He can link play. He's technically spot on, drifts into areas, picks up pockets of space. But I think if you look at his numbers from the back end of the 22-23 campaign, double it and then potentially add on a bit more, because we're a better football team now. We've made upgrades in various areas throughout the summer transfer window, which we'll get to shortly. So I think Tom will look to get towards 12 to 15 goals, and I think that would be a very good return for someone who cost us what was essentially a nominal fee about 7 months ago. So my pick for Gillingham top scorer 23-24 is Tom Nichols. We now go into breakthrough season. Now, this could be a youngster coming through, a youth product that I think is going to go and have an impact in the first team. It could be a new signing that's going to come in and score lots. Could be a goalkeeper if I think we're going to struggle and going to be overworked defensively. But my pick is a man that we've had twice on loan, a man that is now ours permanently. He was our first addition in the summer. It was confirmed that he'd arrived and was staying put in Kent 4 days after the end of last season. I'm talking about none other than our Irish centre-back, Conor Masterson. Very impressive in 2 loan spells. Firstly in League One in the second half of 21-22, when we nearly performed a miracle to stay up. He then went back to QPR. There was interest from elsewhere. We got him back second half of the season that's just finished. He made his second debut as a substitute at Swindon in that crazy game. I just think that Conor now has a home. He'll be settled. He knows Neil Harris. He knows the coaching staff. He knows lots of the players, because this summer's not about overhauls or new 11s. It's about tweaking and adjusting and adding stardust and that type of thing to what's a very good side already. And I just think that Conor, with a settled environment, will go on and play plenty of games. We saw that he was captain second half in the first pre-season friendly at Dover. Maybe an indication that he could be the skipper or the vice captain for the new season. But yeah, I just think that it's been very good twice. With a regular home, he's only going to go and get better and better and better. And I think he will prove himself to be one of the best centre-backs at the level. So my pick for breakthrough season is Connor Masterson. Next category is youngster to make an impact. Now, this isn't an area where I'm saying that they've got to go and play 35, 40, 45 games in the league. They've got to score 10, 15 goals, or they've got to defensively keep 15, 20 clean sheets. It's not about that. It's about someone that maybe slightly left field, maybe slightly under the radar, that's going to have an impact in some games, show themselves to potentially not be ready for the first team on a consistent basis now, but be one for the future, maybe for in 3 months, 6 months, next season even. And I think we've got plenty of options. We're lucky because of the new infrastructure within the football club. We're now going to have this B team where we're creating a clear and concise pathway from youth football to this B team to potentially the first team. And in the recent interview I did with Neil Harris, we both agreed and said that there's nothing better as a coach or a fan as being able to see one of your own come through and excel. And if they're not your own, if you've had to buy them at a young age, it's certainly still nice to see a youngster come in and prove themselves and kick on and be an asset to the football club, because nature of the beast at our level is we have to have some sort of resale value with these players, because that's what keeps us ticking over. That's the nature of the beast. And I think we have got plenty of options for a youngster that could make an impact. Shadrach Ogie recently came in, 21 years old, has played nearly 100 senior games, played around a dozen times for Leyton Orient as they won League Two last season. We've got Ethan Coleman, came in slightly under the radar along with Jaden Clark back in January, had been on loan in the National League at Bromley, so was someone that Andy Hessenthaler and Kenny Jackett would certainly have been aware of. Thought he was very good in the appearances that we saw. Most impressive was probably that away game at Stockport, where he got the nod over Sean Williams. We went and played for a draw. We got our draw, and Coleman was a big part of that. We've got Dom Jeffries, who won Young Player of the Year last season. Really came into his own as the season went on after picking up an injury early on in the campaign. Plays centrally, can play from wide left, wide right. Scored his first goal for the club in that 2-0 win at home to Hartlepool, which got the recovery going. So yeah, still only 21 years of age. Jaden Clark, as I've already mentioned, comes out of non-league from Dulwich Hamlet. Again, someone that Andy Hessenthaler would have seen when he was manager of Dover, or would have seen just because he's got such a vast knowledge of Kent football and non-league football due to his time being in charge at Dover Athletic. We've seen him back end of last season. Jaden Clark looks like he can play from the side or as a 10. Athletic, big, strong, not afraid to do his duty defensively. Been impressed in pre-season. Maybe if you were sitting here and saying, is he going to go to Stockport and start? I'd say no, but I think he's someone that can be in and around the 18 every week. Certainly got all the tools to be an asset at this level. Neil spoke of him having to learn the game out of possession, which will come with time and being on the training pitch and being around pros that have been round the block. But yeah, Jaden Clark's another one. And then, of course, Joe Bode comes into the reckoning. Unfortunately, Lewis Walker has picked up another fairly serious knee injury to go with the one that he had during the second half of the last campaign. So does Joe Bode come into the manager's thoughts? We're not saying, again, that he's going to start games in the league, but we have to have a homegrown player on the bench to be able to fulfil the quota of 7 substitutes. Could Bode be that one? Could he be worth chucking on last 15, 20 minutes of the game? Maybe to pinch a goal or to see a game out with his powerful running and his no-fear approach, where he's not afraid to go through defenders. We've seen that in pre-season. He wasn't overawed by the likes of Charlton and Millwall. So there's plenty of options, I think, for a youngster to go and have a really positive impact of some degree during the new season. If I've got to pick one, I'm going to go for Ethan Coleman, purely because I think he's a natural successor to Sean Williams. Sean Williams is certainly at the veteran stage of his career now, approaching 37. Had that little niggle at the end of the last season where he had to go in and have a cleaning up operation on his knee. May have picked up a knock in pre-season. if he's one of those that Neil Harris is alluded to, is Willow then not going to be fit for Stockport? Does Ethan Coleman have a chance to come in and stake his claim very early on? He's big, he's rangy, he's strong, he can use the ball, loves to put his foot in. A proper Gillingham player, I would say. So for me, youngster to have a positive impact is Ethan Coleman. Right, on to transfer business so far. It is only the 30th of July. There's still a month of the window to go. But I think it's fair to say, and I think the vast majority of Gillingham fans would agree. If you don't, that's fine. Comment down below and let me know why. But I think the majority of the fan base think that the business done so far has been very good. If you compare it again, like I mentioned right at the top of the show, to where we were this stage last season, it's night and day. It's so different. It's ridiculous. The amount of progress we've made in such a short period of time since the Gallinsons arrived has been phenomenal. That's on and off the pitch. Obviously, this episode is about on the pitch. Connor Masterson, like we said, was the first one. That got confirmed 3 or 4 days after the win at Salford. Back on a permanent. We know all about him. Solid centre-half, good in both boxes, can play, can stride out from defence, which I think could be a big asset moving forward this coming season, which would then allow us an overload in midfield. Second arrival, if you're watching Bradford fans, you might want to put it on mute for the next 30 seconds to a minute, is Johnny Williams. Was all set to sign for the Bantams, it seems, according to reports up there, until Gills came and had a word, made a phone call. However it worked, Johnny was in a hotel all set for a medical, but the lure of coming home seemed to be too much. Tunbridge Wells born Johnny Williams arrived. We know what he can do. He's got all the pedigree in the world. He's a former international. He only retired 5 months ago from the international game with Wales. Was in the squad for the last World Cup in Qatar. Played a part in the recent Euros and their success that they've had, relatively speaking, over the last few years. Scored 10 goals. From midfield for Swindon Town last season. So another upgrade in terms of what we were looking at last season. Connor Masterson, an upgrade on Elkan Baggott, no disrespect. Johnny Williams, an upgrade on Ben Reeves, no disrespect. A couple of days later, the third signing of the window came in, and it was another one that no one knew about in terms of getting any leaks or links. Promotion with Stevenage last season under our former gaffer Steve Evans, and that was left back Max Clark, who played 47 times. Combative, strong, athletic, says he'll work hard, likes to be attacking. From what I've seen in pre-season so far, his delivery from wide areas is very, very good. Looks to be an asset. Certainly an upgrade. Again, with no disrespect intended to David Tatonda, who we had last season. So yeah, that was the third one through the door. Will make us stronger defensively to build on what was already a very good defensive record for a side that finished 17th. We all know where our problems lied. We'll get to that. Signing number 4, I've already mentioned him as a potential youngster to make an impact. That's Shadrach Ogie. Can play left-sided centre-back, can play left full-back. I've only seen him once. That was at Dartford in a recent pre-season friendly. Reminded me of Gabby Zakwani. Looks similar to him in terms of the cornrows in his hair. He's big, he's strong, he'll rattle into people. But he looks to be a player that will give us good balance. Neil's spoken of looking for a left-sided centre-back. I think we've got 2 now. Connor Masterson has done that when he's played alongside Maxima. We've obviously got Will Wright as well. Shadrach Ogie will be the other left-sided option. Means we can play a 4, means we can play a 3. Like I've already mentioned earlier on, played a dozen games for championship title winning, not championship winning, League 2 winning Leyton Orient in the most recent season. And I think all the talk around their fan base was the only reason he didn't play more was because of the form of their 2 first choice picks. So again, something for the here and now, but something for the future as well. Signing number 5, I think was the one that no one really expected. I've spoken to people on social media. I've said, I think if it's not the best addition in the division, it's in the top 3. We didn't really think we'd have a chance of signing this fella. Was released by Championship side and Neil Harris's former club, Millwall, at the end of last season. He played 32, 35 games at that level for them. He was playing in the Premier League 5 years ago for Huddersfield. He's had spells at Cardiff, I think, and Fulham in the Championship as well. So in terms of pedigree, experience, 32 years old, can play left back, can play left midfield. It's an unbelievable addition for me. I'm talking about Scott Malone, who, after a couple of trial appearances against Como, for those lucky enough to get to Italy, and Charlton at home, decided that despite having offers from higher up the pyramid, he wanted to be closer to home. He signed on the dotted line about a week ago. So yeah, Scott Malone, a really, really good addition, and one that I think will prove to be one of the best of the entire campaign in the entire league. And most recently, just a couple of days ago, just before the fans forum was started, obviously all the talk's been of we need pace, we need goals, we need more options in the forward line. Well, we've now got that. We've got Ashley Nadesan, who has come in for a nominal fee from Crawley Town. Crawley fans, I do feel your pain, but it seems Gills have taken advantage again of the situation you're currently in with your owners. That's now the third player in the last 7-8 months to join on a permanent after Glenn Morris and Tom Nichols. Been described as the quickest in the division by a country mile by Andy Hessenthaler at the recent Q&A. Can play from the side, so will give us options. For me, looks like he could play with Tom Nichols, looks like he could play with Ollie Hawkins when Ollie Hawkins is fit. You could have Hawkins be the focal point and Nadesan be the one running in behind, but he's 6'2" as well. He's big, he's a strong lad, so maybe if he plays with Tom, then he's the one that wins first balls, and we get Tom and we get wingers or midfielders running in beyond or around him and play from there. Not seen him live, I've seen videos. I know he won Crawley Player of the Year last season, so that's a promising sign. I think he averages a goal or an assist every 3 games throughout his career. So you're looking at 15, 16 goal contributions in a league season, which is not to be sniffed at. Maybe the marquee signing is still to come. But for me, the window has been very, very good so far. Every player that's come in has upgraded what we had before. Like I've said, Connor Masterson, an upgrade on Elkan Baggott. Johnny Williams, an upgrade on Ollie Lee. Ben Reeves. Max Clark, an upgrade on David Tatonda. Ogie, an upgrade on Haji Manoga. Scott Malone, an upgrade on Ryan Law. Ashley Nadesan, dare I say, an upgrade on Lewis Walker. And that's nothing against Lewis Walker. But Nadesan comes with more strings to his bow, I think. But I do hope Lewis Walker gets himself fit and is given the chance to play properly in this new look Gillingham side. But it'll be tough, considering he won't back till probably November. But yeah, that's the transfer business so far. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 additions that make us better. Right, where will the Gills finish? We've discussed the need for goals. I think Tom Nichols will get us goals. I certainly think he'll get to double figures. I think the likes of Ollie Hawkins, Ashley Nadesan will get us 8 to 10 goals if they play regularly. So you're looking at 30, 35 goals from their main 3 strikers at the moment. You've then got the likes of Johnny Williams, George Lapsley, surely looking to get 8 to 10 themselves. So that's getting you close to 50, 55 goals. If we look at Leyton Orient last season, I think they scored 68, conceded 34. So based on our second half of the season, which was 29 scored, 21 conceded. If you double that, that makes it 58 scored, 42 conceded. We've got to find around 10 goals on last season's champions, just as a rough gauge. I know it's not an exact science. So whether that's conceding 5 less and scoring 5 more or just netting 10 more, have we got the ability to do that? I think we have now with the players I've already mentioned. Dom Jeffries will probably look to kick on and look to get 3 to 5, half a dozen goals. We'll get goals from centre-backs. Will Wright will likely chip in if he plays games, set pieces, free kicks. Shay Alexander started taking penalties last season. So we're not a million miles away is what I'm trying to say. I know Neil Harris spoke at the Q&A session a few days ago and said, we want 1 or 2 more attackers, which is great. We're all greedy as fans. If we could get another good front man and maybe an out-and-out quick winger, then I think we're pretty much there for the campaign, all barring injuries and suspensions, which will naturally come. But with the B team now, the likes of Joe Bode and Josh Chambers and Matty MacArthur, Sam Gale, Alex Giles, Ronald Satola have all signed pro deals recently. It means that if we do suffer with injury problems or people do miss games through suspension, that we've got these youngsters that are going to feel closer and more ready to go and sit at least around the first team group if the need arises. The league's going to be tough, we know that. We've got Wrexham coming up, Notts County coming up from the National League. We've got 4 sides coming down from League One. whether they're all going to be a threat based on how the 4 relegated teams did that came down, including us, remains to be seen. But you want to know where I think Gills are going to finish? You're going to have to wait from a 1 to 24. So, without further ado, let's start looking at League 2 as a whole. We've already mentioned there's 2 brilliant teams coming up in Wrexham. You know all about them. They've been on the telly a bit. Notts County, proper football club. The oldest in England, I believe, or one of the oldest. Don't quote me, Notts County fans, or jump down my throat. Apologies if I've got that slightly wrong. We've mentioned the relegated teams that are coming down out of the division above. MK Dons, Accrington Stanley, Forest Green Rovers, Morecambe, who got out of this division a couple of years ago. Accrington won the title, I think, 5 years ago in League 2. You then look at the clubs that failed to get themselves out of the playoffs last season. Stockport County will want to go again. They've got a year's experience now. Bradford, Salford missed out in the semi-finals. Will there be a Barrow that were brilliant for probably 2/3 of the last campaign? And can they kick on? Or will teams find out how to play against them a little bit? Will those that should be up near the top portion of the table that probably weren't there last season, the Tranmeres, the Swindons, will they want to kick on? Have they done enough to kick on? Wimbledon, they came down with us. Doncaster came down with us. Crewe, are they good enough to go and improve on how they did last season? It looks like a brilliant league. It looks like one of the toughest leagues that we've seen in terms of League 2 for many a year, which makes it exciting. But from our point of view, also means that we're not just going to be better than last season, and because we finished second in the table from January to the end of the campaign doesn't mean that we're necessarily going to finish in the automatic promotion spaces. We're going to have to earn the right. We're going to have to work hard. We're going to lose games. We're going to have rough spells. From our point of view, it's about staying with the football team, staying with Neil Harris, being loud, backing the boys. Right, I've waffled on. Let's get on with it. Here come the 1 to 24. What you don't want to be doing is hearing your team too early in this part of the show, because I am going to start from 24th, the relegated teams, unfortunately, and then I'm going to work my way up. So, without further ado, let's do this. In 24th position, and I don't think it's going to come as much of a surprise to anybody who follows the EFL, who follows Sky Bet League 2 in particular, and certainly fans of this club. I'm talking, unfortunately, about Crawley Town. You probably only have to say one word that sums up Crawley Town at the moment and gives you a big reason as to why I think they're going to finish bottom. Wag me. And if I was going to expand on that with another word, recruitment. What is their recruitment policy? They've let us have 3 of their players for next to nothing, for nothing at all. In Glenn Morris's case, we've got 2 of their recent Player of the Year winners in him and Nadesan. They're just an absolute circus, unfortunately. They're buying from low down in non-league. They've come out and said that that's the way they want to go. They want to get the average age down. But you can't just go and rip out an entire team that was very competitive in this division a couple of seasons ago. I can't see Crawley Town, unfortunately, finish any higher than 24th. In 23rd, I have a team that's been in this division for a couple of seasons now, that's always punching above their weight, that probably is a non-league club in terms of its setup and fan base. And again, I mean that with the most respect, because they've done brilliantly over the last few seasons to firstly get promoted out of the National League. Their manager, their chairman, back their club as much as they can within their means. But they flirted with the drop out of this division for the last couple of seasons. And I think that time might eventually catch up with them. If Luke Armstrong, their centre forward, leaves, that would make it even tougher. That's just giving it away. I am talking about my pick for 23rd, Harrogate Town. 22nd is a team that actually flirted with a potential playoff tilt for large periods of last season, but since then they've had a massive exodus in terms of players. They ended last season horrifically. There was no win in plenty. I'm not sure of the exact number. But yeah, like I say, it's almost a brand new group. I think this is the toughest season that their manager, Matt Gray, will have in terms of being able to remould a new look team. They've signed one of our former players, Scott Cashkit, but I think there will be a fairly substantial drop-off for this season. And unfortunately, in 22nd, I've got Sutton United. 21st is a team that actually did all right last season when they made a managerial change and brought in a new gaffer. Their form from that appointment until the end of the season was probably sort of mid-table or just below. They've got a centre forward that scores goals. He got 17 last season, but they've lost two massive players defensively in Priestley Farquharson and Cameron Norman for more than one reason. Them departures are going to make Newport County a lot weaker defensively. If Omar Bogle was to depart, where are the goals going to come from? That would be a fear for me as well. But where were the goals coming from aside from Bogle last season is another question mark, because Norman and Farquharson were their two top scorers after Bogle with 5 and 4 respectively. So for that reason, I think it could be a season of struggle. So my pick for 21st is Newport County. In 20th, I've got a side that were riding the crest of a wave for the best part of 2 or 3 seasons after their promotion out of this division. Their first couple of campaigns back in it were a mixture of bloody in the noses of the bigger teams, but then ultimately struggle, which led to a relegation back to the basement division. I think there's whispers, correct me if I'm wrong, fans of this club, of boardroom unrest, or certainly stuff going on behind the scenes that's not ideal. This division is certainly tougher than when they were in it last as well. I know he didn't have a brilliant campaign last time around, but they've lost the goals of Cole Stockton, who was a massive part of their success. And just looking at our club and how we struggled when coming back down into this division, I've got my pick for 20th position, and that's Morecambe. In 19th, I've got a team that is very similar to Morecambe in my reasoning as to why I think they will struggle. The division is certainly a lot tougher than when they got promoted as champions out of it in, I think, 2017-18. Small budget, small fan base, which means that you're then going to struggle financially with the likes of the big hitters that are now at this level, the ones that we've already mentioned. I think they've been on something of a downward spiral since the departures of first Dion Charles and then Colby Bishop. But they've got a brilliant manager at this level. John Coleman knows this division like the back of his hand. So if anyone can get them punching above their weight again, it would be John Coleman. But been on a bit of a downward spiral. League's tougher. Where do the goals come from? I think they conceded 77 last season. So my pick for 19th is Accrington Stanley. In 18th position, I've got a side that relied heavily on one player last season to score their goals, to earn them points, to get them wins. And that player has since departed for pastures new. He's jumped up a division. It's a club that's been renowned over the years and years for churning out a conveyor belt of youngsters that have then been sold on to bigger clubs for big money. It's not happened as well as they would certainly like in recent seasons, coupled with the fact that they've lost Dan Ajay, who scored 16 of their 48 league goals last season, which is exactly a third. So that's a big chunk of goals to replace. My pick for 18th position is Crewe Alexandra. 17th, it's another relegated side. There's only 2 of you left, so which one will it be? Woeful in 22-23, unfortunately, this club. This will give it away. I think they won 5 times in the league as they got relegated in bottom position. That is another big giveaway. Big Duncan Ferguson, Premier League legend, came in and tried to at least stabilise things in the final period of the campaign, but it didn't really work out. Something must have gone on behind the scenes, because he's walked out a few days into pre-season. There was then the appointment of the women's manager on a caretaker basis. That lasted for 1 or 2 friendlies. They've now appointed a new gaffer who's not going to have a lot of time to come in and put his own stamp on things. Don't get me wrong, I think Matty Taylor's a brilliant acquisition at the level, 33 years of age, but his numbers have been good over the last few years at the level above. But momentum is a good thing in terms of an upward trajectory, and it's also a big hindrance going the other way as well. Duncan Ferguson brought in Ryan Innes before he left. certainly a Duncan Ferguson type signing. Unfortunately for Innes, for all his abilities, he seems to be injured or suspended almost permanently. So I'm not sure how much of an improvement that makes them. So my pick for 17th is Forest Green Rovers. In 16th is a side that's done very well last season under a new manager. They certainly punched above their weight for, well, I think it's fair to say the entirety of the season, given their final finishing position. My only concern now is, did teams work out how to play against them? Will there be some sort of second season syndrome with the gaffer? Have they been worked out? They won 11 games in the first half of the campaign, but that dropped off to 7 in the second 23 fixtures, and they lost their last 4. So not the best way to end the season. I know it's a big gap between final day of 22-23 and first day of 23-24, but it's another club that is working on a shoestring budget compared to a lot of teams in this division. So my pick for 16th is Barrow. 15th is a club that I think will improve this season compared to where they finished the last. I think their business so far has been fairly decent. But I think in their manager, they've got a man who will quickly come under pressure if they don't start well. Last season was his first at the club, so you could almost forgive him and give him some slack because he's having to pick up someone else's mess after relegation. There's a clue. I like their business, like I've said. Alex Bass on loan, Josh Neufeld, Jake Reeves, Omar Bugiel. I think they're players that will improve AFC Wimbledon. But my fear is if these players don't hit the ground running and gel almost immediately, Johnny Jackson could quickly be under pressure. And you have to remember that they only won 2 games in the league in 2023, which needs rectifying quickly. So my pick for 15th is AFC Wimbledon. Into the final 2 positions of the bottom half of the table now. And in 14th, I've got a team that I think will improve. There were signs of it certainly at the back end of the last campaign after a managerial change which came about through no fault of their own. It wasn't a sacking. They had their gaffer pinched from higher up the pyramid. So there's a slight clue as to who I might be talking about. They've got some good players. Again, they're a team similar to Crewe and certainly how Crewe used to be, that rely on their youth academy. They get people into the first team at a very young age, nurture them, coach them, train them to be better, to improve the first team, and then eventually they get moved on for a fee. Yeah, in Noah Chilvers and Junior Shamadou, they've already got 2 of the best youngsters at the level. My fear is, will they be pinched between now and the end of the transfer window? But yeah, as I've already said, Ben Garner came in for the final period of the campaign, and there were certainly signs towards the end of the season that he was starting to get his ideas and his methods across. It was a big change. It was a big step out of their comfort zone, because Colchester have always been known for internal appointments. So they've gone away from that, which I think is brilliant. I think it's a really refreshing approach. And yeah, I think Ben Garner will certainly have them enjoying a campaign where they don't have to look over their shoulder a lot, if at all. So my pick for 14th is Colchester United. Winning the bottom half of the table is a club that, in fairness, should be a lot higher. That should be one of the heavyweights in this division in terms of stadium size, structure, fan base, history. But they've had a couple of underwhelming seasons. Certainly in the most recent campaign, they were very poor and were nowhere near where they should be. I think their fans have generally been underwhelmed by the managerial appointment. They've lost, dare I say it, 2 of their best players. They struggled for goals last season. They have tried to rectify that up top with 2 additions that I think will prove to be very decent. Whether one can replicate last season's numbers and whether the other is a player that will get you 15, 20 goals. But again, you might not need that. I'm not sure. But I like Christian Dennis and I like Luke Norris as business. They will certainly give them more cut and thrust in the final third. My only concern is that 2 of their better players were fullbacks and they've both gone. I'm talking about Ethan Bristow and Josh Dacres Cogley have moved on. So where does the supply come from? They look all much of a muchness in the middle of the park for me. So that, coupled with the fact that the fans, I'm not sure, are entirely on board with the appointment of Ian Dawes, means that my pick for 13th is Tranmere Rovers. Into the top half of the table we go, and if you've not heard your team mentioned yet, you can keep those fingers crossed, because we will start to soon approach the top 7 positions, which is always the minimum aim, isn't it? Because at the start of the season, Everyone's level. Everyone's got 0 points. My pick for 12th is a side that last season, for large periods, looked like they could go on and be a threat at the top end of the table. They then lost their goal threat halfway through the campaign, and this is the risk with loan deals, isn't it? He went back to his parent club, and then as a further kick in the guts, barely played for the parent club, which is a big clue. They've changed their manager. Matt Sadler has got his first job, I think, in senior football. So how will that go? I was obviously talking about the goals in terms of Danny Johnson, who returns to the Bescott Poundland Stadium, or whatever it's called now. That will certainly give them more of a threat at the top end of the pitch. Defensively, I think they've made some good additions as well. Chris Hussey, Priestley Farquharson was one I would have certainly hoped that Gills would have had a look at. So that will make them better defensively. I think that's an upgrade on Manny Month, who's moved on and I think stepped up a division. But I think these two will make them more solid defensively. The only question mark is over Sadler. Obviously, it's a big ask to step into the breach. But if he can hit the ground running, if he can stamp his authority on things, they could have the potential to push up a little bit higher. But for now, my pick for 12th is Walsall. 11th is another club that's starting again in terms of a new managerial appointment for the new season. They've not done loads of business. Their fans are not the happiest on social media at the moment because of that and for various other reasons. I think they had 2 managers or 3 managers last season, which is never a good sign. Their most recent barely lasted any time at all. But they do have good players. They have one of the best at the level in terms of a goal threat, and that is Charlie Austin. I think Mickey Flynn will change the way they play, which may take time. But if you've got a man like Austin in your ranks, then you're always going to be potent at the top end of the pitch. I think Dan Kemp's a really good bit of business coming in on loan from MK Dons. I can't work out why they've allowed him to go on loan to a rival. Certainly when his form at the back end of last season in a Hartlepool side that ultimately got relegated was very, very good. So Dan Kemp I like. Liam Kinsella comes in to reunite with Mickey Flynn again, previously at Walsall. They, of course, though, did lose around a dozen goal contributions with Johnny Williams moving to the Gills. So, yeah, I think it could be a season of transition for this club. And my pick for 11th is Swindon Town. Into the top 10 we go. And my pick in this position is a club that last season did very, very well. Maybe they'd have finished higher if they'd not had such a good run in the FA Cup, where I think they became the first club ever to beat 5 sides from divisions above as they made it all the way to the quarterfinals. It's Grimsby Town. No one needs to know anymore. Danny Rose, Toby Malarkey, Charles Vernon have all come in. I think they'll improve the 11 or the squad at least. It gives them more numbers. It gives them more depth. Paul Hurst is good at the level. We know that historically. He's been successful at this club before. He's been successful at other clubs. The only downside to their summer so far, I think, is the departure of goalkeeper Max Crocombe, who decided not to sign a new contract. But I think Grimsby's business means that they'll be collectively stronger. And therefore, my pick for 10th is Grimsby Town. 9th is a club that I think will have something of a drop-off from last season, and I have my reasons for this, and I know I'm going to get shot down by the fan base. When I did this preview video last season, I was quite new to it. I was talking to fans of various clubs. This fan base were vehement and said they had the best squad in the division, going to win the league, definitely getting promoted, manager with calibre higher up. But there are question marks, I think, over Mark Hughes. And there are further question marks for me. Romani Critchlow has now left. He was very good on loan. He's gone to Peterborough in the division above. Andy Cook scored 29 goals, I think, in the league last season. But where were the goals coming from without him? The likes of Matt Derbyshire, Dane Oliver struggled. I know V had injuries, which doesn't help. But if you stop Andy Cook, do you stop Bradford would be a big question mark. They brought in Alex Patterson, which I think is a decent bit of business. But I just think that other teams might improve past them. And there's big enough question marks around the manager and the style of play that for me means that this team will miss out. So my pick for 9th is Bradford City. The final position before we get into those coveted playoff positions and the top 3. I almost feel bad picking this side for just because of recent seasons. They always seem to be the bridesmaids. They're perennial challengers to the top positions, to the playoffs, to automatic promotion, but they always, for one reason or another, come up short. The manager, Nigel Clough, gets another chance at the level to get Mansfield Town out of this division. My only question would be, how many chances do you keep giving a man who keeps coming up just short? Tell me if I'm wrong, Mansfield fans. That's what this is all about. It's all about opinions. I think they've got good players. They'll be a threat to plenty of teams, don't get me wrong. Aaron Lewis has come in on a free from Newport. I think it's a decent addition. Bailey Cargill, if you can keep him fit, left-sided centre-half, is very good. Won the League 2 title not so long ago with Forest Green Rovers. Will Swan signs on a permanent, having been on loan, so he doesn't improve them per se because he was here already. Don't get me wrong, Mansfield will win plenty more than they lose, but I just think there's something missing. There's a lot of players that are over 30 as well now. Question marks over Nigel Clough. So my pick, again, for 8th is Mansfield Town. Into the playoffs we go, and 7th place is where we land next. This is a club that have got much improvement to do from their 22-23 campaign, but I think they will. I think in terms of how they've approached the summer is certainly a lot better than what it's been in recent seasons. They've made a very good managerial appointment, very strong at the level, knows his way around the game, has been around the block, has earned promotions, done some decent business, done 2 bits of really, really good business for me that will improve them no end at both ends of the pitch. I'm talking about Richard Wood, who comes in with loads of leadership and experience from the Championship, having left Rotherham. I'm talking about Joe Ironside, who's been a good player at League One for the last couple of seasons for Cambridge United. Grant McCann is, of course, the managerial appointment I'm talking about. And I think my pick will improve sufficiently to gate crash the playoffs. Therefore, my pick for 7th position is Doncaster Rovers. 6th is a club that did very well in the second half of last season. In fact, their form was as good as anyone apart from Stockport during the final 23 games of the campaign. They won 12 times in that period. They improved their squad in January. They've improved it again in the summer. There's still talk over goals and pace and maybe a winger. If we can get them in, there's your clue. I said we. My pick is obviously Gillingham for 6th position. Just holding back on the top 3 because I think we still need more pace in forward areas. Like I say, I think Ashley Naderzan covers that to a degree. He's not going to score you loads, I don't think. Defensively, we were very good though on the whole last season. Our big problem was finding the target at the other end. Neil Harris has proved himself to be a good manager again at the level that he's not managed at previously until this season. So my pick for 6th position is Gillingham. Into the top 5, and in 5th position I have a club that I've always said finds a way to mess it up, to not get themselves over the line, whether that's to get into the playoffs, to get promoted. They're very well backed by very famous owners. They finally got themselves over the line last term in terms of getting into the playoffs, but they did suffer heartache, unfortunately. I think it was semi-final defeat in a spot kick shootout. They've got a manager who came out of a Premier League academy who adjusted brilliantly to life in the Football League last season. He will benefit from another 12 months experience, another 12 months know-how. They tended to score loads and concede plenty last season, and certainly in terms of the clubs that were in the top 7, I think they conceded the joint most at home and the highest away of all those sides that got into the top 7. They've looked to improve that. They've signed Curtis Tilt, they've signed Luke Garbutt, who I think will be very good at the level. I think the goalkeeper, Alex Cairns, has signed on a permanent as well, who's one of the best around in the lower reaches of the EFL. So I think they'll be more sturdy defensively. So my pick for 5th is Salford City. The final playoff berth will be filled, in my opinion, by a side that should never have been in non-league over the last few seasons. Historically, they are a Football League team. One of the founders of the Football League, I do believe, that was mentioned earlier in the episode. They finished with 107 points in the National League in 22-23 and somehow didn't manage to win the division. They had to go through what turned out to be a fairly stressful playoff campaign, but they managed to get themselves over the line. They only lost once at home last season, so their record at Meadow Lane will be surely a threat if they can replicate anywhere near that kind of form over 46 Sky Bet League 2 games. Macaulay Longstaff scored 42 times in 48 games last season for them, which is astonishing. Even if he scores half of that, they're going to be a threat. You then chuck into the mix the likes of Jody Jones, who should be playing higher if it wasn't for injury. Dan Cowley, again, probably got ability above League 2, but for whatever reason isn't playing above that level. Will Randall knows the level. And of course, I think the standout one is David McGoldrick, returns to the club, having been one of the top scorers in League 1 last season. So my pick for 4th position is Notts County. Automatic promotion, you say? Right, in 3rd position is the other club that came up from the National League last season with a frankly ridiculous 111 points. Champions, well-backed, very famous because of their owners, Ryan Reynolds and Rob McElhenney. But you still have to go out and earn the right to win football matches, and Wrexham won plenty as they won the trophy to get back into the Football League after what was a 15-year absence. And they've not done loads of business in terms of incomings, but I think it's fair to say their squad is probably, if not at least good enough for this division, potentially good enough for the division above. If you look at the names they've got, they've added one player from the Championship in Will Boyle, who I think reunites with Ben Tozer in defence. I think they was together at Cheltenham a few seasons ago. So in terms of what they've got to bring in is not a lot. The only small question mark is obviously the injury to Paul Mullin that's happened recently in America. But I think they've got enough goals in other areas to cope without him for whatever period he misses. So my pick for 3rd position is Wrexham. My pick for runners-up is probably an anomaly in terms of all the other teams that I've spoken about that came down from League 1. And there is the giveaway. Graham Alexander is their new manager after they sacked the former incumbent after relegation in 22-23. I think Graham Alexander is a very clever appointment at the level. He has had success here before with various clubs. Is their squad one that was too good to go down from League 1? Perhaps, but you win football matches on grass, not on paper. They've still got a lot of names that will be a threat in League 2. They've made some good signings as well. Craig McGillivray in goal, I think, is probably one of the best in the division at his best. If they can keep Mo Issa, they're going to have threats. They've signed Cameron Norman from Newport, who was one of the best centre-backs about last season. Alex Gilby, who's come back, who will be a threat from midfield. I just think that the setup, the manager, the playing squad that they've got at the moment doesn't need too much tinkering. So my pick to be runners-up and to finish in 2nd place is MK Dons. Right, that means there is only one team that has not been mentioned, and therefore my choice for Sky Bet League 2 champions 2023-24 is a club that came ever so close to promotion in the most recent season. They had to suffer the heartbreak of a penalty shootout defeat against Carlisle United. Dave Challoner is a serial promotion winner. Their squad is full of good players all over the park. You have to forget that this is a team that at times looked a cut above the division during the last season. They then lost their top scorer, Carl Wootton, for the run-in, which ended up costing them, I think. They've made a couple of signings that I think improve them even more. I know they've lost Chris Hussey, he's gone to Walsall, but they've signed Toure from Salford. So I think that's a more than able replacement. And they have attracted none other than Nick Powell, him who went to Man United for $6 million a few years ago from Crewe Alexandra. He has been attracted to Edgeley Park. Just hope he has a shocker opening day. But my pick for 1st place is Stockport County. Right, that is my season preview concluded. Thank you if you're still watching at this stage. I do appreciate that the first period of the episode was solely concentrating on my own club, Gillingham. If you have watched till the very end, I do appreciate it. Please keep liking, please keep subscribing, please keep sharing, commenting down below. Let me know how wrong I've got my prediction on your team. Maybe let me know if I've got it correct. I doubt it very much. Please don't abuse me on social media. It is just my opinion. I may be very wrong. I was very wrong with a lot of teams last season. In my defence, it was Gillingham's first year back in League Two for the best part of a decade, so I am sticking to that defence. I don't have one this season. I have done a lot of research, which has taken a lot of time, but that obviously doesn't mean that I'm going to be correct. Are you happy with where I've put your team? Are you unhappy? Of course you are. If I put you down the bottom, I totally get that. But like I said, comment down below. Let us know your thoughts. I have tried to be reasonable and realistic with my placings. I'm sure there's a little bit of bias towards my own club, of course, that happens with everyone. But yes, as I've said, I appreciate you watching. I appreciate your continued support. Please keep doing all that you do. Not long to go. I'll be back middle of the week for a match preview with a Stockport fan for the first game of the new season. But until then, enjoy the rest of your Sunday. Enjoy your week. And up the Gills.